And welcome back, folks, to A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I am your host, David Gornoski, and I have a great guest coming up here. He is Kevin Ellerby. He's a YouTube star. Kevin Ellerby is his name. You can find him on Kevin's Corner if you search for that on YouTube or Google. And I've really enjoyed watching his videos. And he's got a quick wit. He's got all kinds of unique angles on challenging the sacred cows of politics. And I just think he's got a great, fresh voice that we need to, help spread the message for liberty. And, if you want to join in and talk to Kevin today, it's 407-916-5400 is the number to call the studio if you have a question or a comment. And that's 407-916-5400. Also coming up on the show, we'll be joined again, as we previewed in the last show, with NASA physicist Dr. Yu, who is a theoretical physicist who challenges the groupthink of physics that unlocks, if he's correct, it unlocks new ways of innovating that don't rely on big government to solve for us. So you'll be hearing from him later on in the program. But Kevin, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you, David, and it's an honor to be with you this evening.
And thank you. Yeah, I've seen a lot of your videos, and you used to be a Democrat. You were kind of a mainstream leftist, right?
Absolutely. Grew up in the inner city of Youngstown, Ohio. Grew up in a typical urban environment where the majority of the people in my environment were Democrat, of course. And, of course, my mother and my father were Democrat. And it's kind of funny because, prior to becoming, older and seeing things totally different, I just voted Democrat. My first couple times voting, I voted Democrat because that's just the way it was supposed to be. Nobody even told me why. It's kind of like, you grew up in a Christian home, and until you become old enough to embrace the doctrine of Christ for yourself, you just kind of believe as a Christian because mom and dad told you that that's how you're supposed to believe. So, I went out and I would just vote Democrat, and I'll never forget as a young man, a young boy growing up in the inner city, my mother, when Reagan got in office, she came to me, and we grew up on a lot of government assistance programs, and she came to me and she said, now that Ronald Reagan's in office, everything's going to be taken away. And you know what's going to happen? There will be no Christmas. And at 9 years old, you tell a kid there's no Christmas. I was upset with Ronald Reagan and didn't even know why. I was like, who is this Ronald Reagan, and why is he taking Christmas? And so I just went on a long journey up until about the age of 22, 23, where I just voted repeatedly as a Democrat. But what really started me to transition from the Democratic Party and just the whole liberal movement was accepting Christ in my life in college. Wow. And once I did that, I started seeing that the majority of the Democratic views was really, just it didn't line up with my Christian values. And it wasn't just that they didn't line up with my Christian values, but as time went on, it started to become not passive, but aggressive when it comes down to enforcing their values on society. And I kind of just saw, how this was going. I'm going, wow, this is going in a very dangerous direction, because it's just a matter of time before it comes knocking on the church of on the doors of the church, on people's personal doors. And sure enough, we're living it now. We're kind of seeing the manifestation of this liberal movement, and I think the engine behind it, as you see just by watching the media, is heavily relying on the Democratic Party and their movement. So I'm glad that I walked away when I did, but for years I kind of laid neutral, but this last election has just infuriated me, and I think it really opened up what's really going on. Those that have an eye to see and an ear to hear, it really started to shine a light on how corrupt and how demonic some of the doctrine and views from the liberal movement is just flooding our society. So it made me just say, you know what, it's time to just open my mouth and start talking about it. And that's what happened. And next thing you know, Kevin's Corner was born, and the rest is kind of making history, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you've got millions of views on YouTube. You're all over the place. I saw you were meeting with a lot of other stars like Candace Owens. So you're really like on the front lines of really trying to get people to challenge their groupthink. And, I'm not really partisan, so I have a lot of friends on both sides, but I think there's really, you're right, it's the ideology of victims that we really have to confront, and it's a perversion of Christianity. It's like, I call it like a Christianity with a machine gun. It's like you're trying to force people to be kind or to be loving to their neighbor with the threat of coercion through, taxes, regulations, redistribution, speech laws, all the little things they want to do to micromanage our lives. And it's like a perversion of Christian values, because instead of Jesus puts the emphasis on the individual sharing the burden of loving their neighbor, not hiring people to go force that neighbor to change his heart, right, or his behavior.
Absolutely. And, I think, too, it's funny how, to me, it seems as if this whole progressive movement is trying to give society an alternative to feel good about their life without Christ. They're imitating Christian values, but it's false. It's they're saying you have to be sensitive what you say to people. You have to be tolerant. All these things on its face value sounds great, but what are you tolerating becomes the question. Tolerant to what? What if what they're doing violates your morals, your Christian beliefs? Do you have to embrace it? Do you have to tolerate it? So on the face value, I think it puts it out there as we're trying to create this utopian society through legislation, through progressive thinking, but we're going to shove it down your throat. And anything that you want people to embrace, I don't think the way to go about it is shoving it down their throat, first of all. But secondly, I think it's an effort to make people's conscience not be burdened by the gospel, to make people feel like, hey, I'm doing good, because the way they package it, it sounds great on the surface until you start to unravel it. And so I think it's very dangerous, and it's funny how when you look at the things that a lot of the progressive movement is attacking, besides the president, of course, but it all comes down to either the president, and then they somehow want to keep bringing up, Western Christian values and trying to tie it to the president, then go back to Western Christian values as if there's something nefarious about being a Christian. There's something outdated, or there's something oppressive about being a Christian. And so I keep finding the same narrative where they find their way attacking the church somehow, and if you can't even bring church up in the argument, and of course, you just open up a can of worms. That's a feeding frenzy for the left, and it's kind of obvious to a degree. And I try to bring some awareness to people that are in the middle, and because I'm gonna be honest, a lot of my friends that are not conservative or liberal, they're just reasonable people. They're just good people, and I try to just make a lot of those people in that category just be aware of the trickery and the manipulation that's being done to try to, move society in a direction that maybe they'll wake up one day and realize I didn't want to move in that direction. I didn't see how I got here, but I'm here, and they got me there through manipulation. But just making people aware, hopefully, will prevent a lot of that.
And if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Kevin Ellerby with Kevin's Corner on YouTube. He's a YouTube commentator, and he has moved away from the victimist narrative of groupthink that is dominating media, and he's now becoming more of an independent thinker, and he's using his platform on YouTube to really wake up a lot of people as well. And I really hope we can unify. I think, we've lost something that binds us together, and I think a lot of that has to do with the spirit of accusation. The word Satan, the original word for that, means accuser, and so that's what I see happening constantly on the media, 24/7. It puts us in a really negative vibe where we feel the need to mirror their nasty spirit back at us because they're always accusing. You're wrong. You're racist. You're bad. You're this. You're that. Accuse, accuse, accuse. And that's just not the principle that our civilization prospered from. Our civilization prospered on cultivating, on self-sacrifice, not blaming you're trying to take your guilt and throw it onto the back of your neighbor. And I think Jesus saves us from that when we imitate his principles and apply them to our lives and our politics. I think it works, and I think you're a testament to that. So
thank you.
We're going to just hold for a second. We'll be right back in a few minutes. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm David Gornoski, and this is News Radio 102.5 WFLA.